This is RealAg Live. And welcome to RealAg Live, everybody. I'm your host today, Shaun Haney. Really appreciate you joining us here today for the program. We're going to have a lot of fun here talking about a subject that I think is seeing a lot of change right now, not only in Canada, but of course in the United States as well. There are some similar players in the ag retail space, but there's also some differences that we're going to sort of flush out today with our guest. If you want to participate in today's show, all you have to do is enter your question or your comment in the box, whether you're watching on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. I gave up on streaming to Twitch. There just wasn't, I don't know if that was our audience. I gave up on it. We're only on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook now. We're pulling back. Okay, what else do I need to mention? Oh, let's bring in today's guest. It is Margy Eckelkamp. She's the editor of The Scoop. Margy, how are you?
Hey, Shaun, doing well.
Great to chat with you. So, Margy, you're based in Missouri, right?
Yeah, so I am just about 45 minutes southwest of St. Louis, which folks may be familiar as the eastern part of Missouri. I've been a remote employee pre-COVID, so our Farm Journal headquarters is on the opposite side of the state toward Kansas City, but I'm here on the eastern side of Missouri.
Nice. So for some of our audience that isn't familiar with The Scoop, what is The Scoop and who's the audience? Who are you targeting?
Yeah, so The Scoop is our multimedia brand that serves ag retailers, farm managers, and crop consultants. It is part of the Farm Journal family of media brands. So I'm part of the integrated news team there. And I've been part of Farm Journal for 15 years in a couple of different roles, but all of those have been centered on agronomy, machinery, and technology in some way. And I've been reporting on the ag retail market and who I call the maximizers and influencers in the market for about 15 years now, or 5 years, excuse me, 5 years as The Scoop.
Yeah, well, and this is a super busy time for ag retail, and we're going to talk about some of the trends and things that we're seeing in the marketplace that are really kind of a transition time for ag retail as they try to look and carve out their niche in the future. One of those big trends, Margy, has been the consolidation that has happened. And ag retail has always kind of gone through, like any industry, cycles of consolidation. But boy, it's something that has really, really happened as of late.
Sure. And, here in the States, and I'm sure there's some parallels to the Canadian market as well, I kind of divide ag retail into three buckets with some overlap, but those three buckets would be the regional independent ag retail businesses. And then there's those cooperatives that have a wider footprint. And then there's the privately held companies, which also tend to have a little manufacturing experience. So there I'm referring to the Nutrients and the Simplots and those types of companies. And we have seen consolidation across all three of those buckets. Even within the last 18 months, big news with Growmark acquiring Southern states and really expanding its footprint beyond the Corn Belt and the Northeast into the Mid-Atlantic and Southern states. We had Simplot acquire Pinnacle Ag, again, expanding their footprint as well across the South. And then we had the formation of a new Greenpoint Ag, which is a $1 billion agronomy business across the Mid-South. So those were three big headlines in the last 18 months. And then, Shaun, just in the last 5 days, our friends in Iowa in the cooperative system have made big news as Max Yield and New Cooperative have announced they're pursuing a pending merger that would be finalized later this summer. It's going to a farmer member vote. And then also Landis Cooperative. So those are some of the biggest cooperatives across the state of Iowa. Landis Cooperative is expanding into Minnesota with a completely different business model. As their CEO, Matt Karsten, says, they're not rushing to the altar with a merger or acquisition, but they're doing a new format called optimization by Landis. So they're bringing in other businesses, streamlining some of the back end processes and systems in the business, but not necessarily taking it to a member vote or merging their board of directors or going that route. And so their first optimization by Landis is the folks at New Way and K&H Cooperative expanding their footprint into southern Minnesota.
So is it a race to expand revenues? Is it a race to say, we have, 200 outlets across so many provinces or states? Like, what are they racing to?
I think it is about size and scale. I think as we've seen the trend within the farmer customer base, as far as farmers getting larger or farmers getting more specialized, right? We're seeing that same thing in ag retail. So those trusted advisors are reflecting their customer base. And so, yes, we are seeing consolidation for greater size and scale. And then we're also seeing ag retailers develop even new service or niche services and perhaps going that route as well.
Okay, got a question here from Sherilyn Nagel. She farms in Saskatchewan. Consolidation is happening all around us. What gives independent retailers an advantage or disadvantage over the larger retail companies?
So some of the examples I would just share from those independents is, again, they typically to be focused on a more hyper local basis. So they are able to stay very, very close to their customer, and they're able to see some of the trends, some of the shifts that could be happening within their geographic focus. Now, the larger companies, they're going to have scalability, right? So they're able to take a technology and spread it across hundreds of locations, which definitely makes a huge impact for our industry.
Yeah, and can some of those independents provide some of those, like the independent has always been built upon, we don't sell on price, we sell on service, right? And that in the last, well, I don't know, now that since August commodity markets have pulled up, maybe that's changed, but selling on service has been really tough over the past 4 years prior to this commodity run up in August.
Yeah, I would share maybe, and Shaun, curious on your thoughts as far as adoption that you guys have seen in Canada. But in the States, we have seen an increase in use of online crop input purchasing. So at Farm Journal, we do an annual survey. We've done it now for 3 years. Nearly twice as many farmers tell us they buy some, not all, not a majority, but some of their crop inputs online. And we're really keying in there to fertilizer, seed, and crop production products. So when we first did that survey in 2018, 8% of farmers told us they bought something online. It rose to 11% in 2019. And then this last year in 2020, when we surveyed farmers for their crop input purchases, US farmers told us 15% were buying something online. And I think what I bring that up for, or why I bring that up, is 3 years ago, if you talked to a group of ag retailers, they would have very much perceived, on general, they would have perceived e-commerce or online sales as a threat to their business. If you talk to any of the leading ag retailers today, and a much more even a general basis as well, they would tell you that conducting business with their customer online is a huge opportunity. And you see more and more of them investigating and investing in their digital strategy.
Yeah, and what we've seen in the marketplace is, right away, I think when we talk about online buying, people think of like an FBN as an example where online company first, trying to figure out the bricks and mortar and the logistics, after that. But then you have like the example of Nutrien, where they clearly have the bricks and mortar and trying to figure out how they transition customers to that digital space. It's an interesting battle because two companies coming with very, very different histories.
Yes, and I think you bring up two key examples there that illustrate really the transition of how the inputs marketplace has evolved to have a greater digital footprint.
Yeah, and so when farmers think about online buying of fertilizer, like or any of these products, I guess for that matter, it's like the buying it is the easy part. It's these companies trying to figure out the logistics of making it happen at the farm level. When somebody needs that seed or they need that herbicide product, making sure that happens, because that's where the satisfaction comes, right? Like buying online on Amazon when I'm buying a book, that's whatever, but it's the fact that it just shows up at my door. That's the part it really brings me back, right?
Well, and we've seen a variance in what inputs farmers are buying online by product category. So by far and away, each of the 3 years, pre and post emerge herbicides have been the top categories bought online. But this last year's survey, we did see more farmers interested in buying bulk fertilizer, micronutrients, and those inputs online. So rapidly evolving space. I also appreciate how you bring up the nutrient example, because I think so much of what they've done with their portal has exposed a lot of farmers to what's possible. And I think we need to continue to have discussions around this, because what does an online purchase mean? What does an online purchase mean to a farmer? What does it mean to ag retail? Because, we talk about e-commerce, we talk about some of these terms very broadly, but each of these experiences looks very different. And I would say a majority of the seed, specifically seed, that is being bought online or being bought via a digital platform is being done so with the help of an agronomist, either virtually with you or sitting next to you, because that is such a relationship-based process, as well as a very detailed process that farmers want somebody consulting with them along the way.
Absolutely. So the scenario there is, hey, let's log into my computer and I'll help you put the order in. It's like going to Lowe's or Home Depot and you need to buy some stuff, and you do an online purchase through the store. But that's a transition, right? It's a work in progress that happens over time. So there's the e-commerce side of the digital strategy, but there's also the precision ag component, and the precision ag component has been has it not become a kind of a required bolt-on for the ag retail to have to offer to its customer?
I think in some form or fashion that the retailer has to be able to engage with the farmer via whatever discussion they want to have around precision ag. So we just did a survey at Farm Journal. I'll even pull it up for myself so I quote the right numbers, Shaun. But we asked farmers, we said, okay, you just won the lottery. What farm technology do you invest in first? 31% said variable rate application. And to achieve variable rate in the field, most farmers need some kind of trusted advisor helping them with either the prescription map or the in-field application of that. I'll also share the second most popular answer was telematics or remote monitoring. The third most popular, which was kind of surprising to me, was auto steering. We've got about a 60% adoption rate here in the United States of auto steering, but still 17% obviously say they see the ROI, and that's where they would put that lottery money first. So a fun question to ask.
I would have thought the auto steer would be way I thought we had kind of got to the full capacity there of market penetration on something like auto steer. So if variable rate is that sort of lottery ticket, does that tell us that there's still room for prices to come down on that feature then? Because I thought we were kind of already quite low at this point on some of those services.
That's a fair question. I think we're going to continue to see some evolution there. I think that every farmer, I often say farmers are independent business people. They all make their decisions independently. So it's how they're evaluating the ROI. There's a lot of discussion around variable rate fertility, where it pays, where it doesn't pay. There's a lot of discussion around variable rate seeding. We heard a lot about multiple hybrids in a field, and you don't hear as much about that, but you still hear some. So it's really interesting to see how the space is evolving. I do want to bring up telematics, just from a parallel industry to ag retail. I had a really great discussion with a large John Deere dealer across the Mid-South. So they have 31 locations, 200 technicians, and they've got 3,000 machines on JD Link, which is the remote service telemetry system. And I bring that up because the folks at Greenway shared with me that system and how they've been able to engage customers with these digital tools and what COVID did in this last year and how they were able to still be right beside their farmer customers, that progressed them 3 years ahead of where they thought they would be on their customer adoption trajectory. Part of my role, I should share too, I work with our team at Machinery Pete.
Mhm.
So our farm equipment division at Farm Journal, working with Greg Peterson, he shares that COVID brought forward farm equipment auctions
Yeah.
7 years into the future because of COVID and their adoption of online tools. And I share this because I think so much of what we've learned in the last year is we've reached new plateaus of technology adoption. And once these ROIs are realized, or once the ease of use is realized, or once a farmer sees the value in using these technologies, or an ag retailer sees the values in using these technologies, we're not going backward. We're only going forward. And I think that's really encouraging and makes me pretty bullish.
So with all of these, services that the ag retail traditionally provided, and with the new ones that are being added that have more of a technology slant to them, how hard is it for ag retails to staff their outlets, to have people to be able to, be that expert talking to the farmer?
Yeah, so we did a survey at the very beginning of the summer last year asking what were going to be the challenges for ag retail because of COVID and how it was going to change their business. We saw it as definitely a game-changing event because ag retail is such a high-touch business, and because of safety protocols and procedures, high touch was not available. So what farmers told us was that when dealing with their primary retailer, and we define primary retailer as the retailer that they spent the most money with,
Yep.
okay? 84% of farmers said that they call to talk to one specific guy or gal. They have one go-to person that they want to talk to when they have a question with their primary retailer. And I think that reinforces this idea that ag retailers are doubling down as that trusted advisor and how they can bring value to the farm. And I think at the same time, farmers are demanding it, that they've got that go-to.
Well, because you think about it, so just as much as the retail is overloaded trying to be an expert in all of these things, the farmer is the one that at the end of the day is paying the bill, that has to be just as much of an expert as well. And so any
Right.
help they can get from that retail, it's kind of a circular discussion, but the farmer is the one at the end of the chain here that is really trying to sort out some of these things, and needs as much help as they can get.
Yeah. And as you talk about, as far as a labor pool for ag retail, there's a lot of different anecdotes I could throw in as far as retailers doing some really creative things on finding talent and fostering talent across their organization. We just published this morning, so your audience is actually the first group to have me talk about it, but we just published this morning our annual salary survey. So we ask our audience what's their entry level salaries and what's included in their base compensation packages for sales agronomists as well as machinery operators or applicators. One of the stats that I think is really interesting is how much the local competition impacts what they offer for entry level. I think it's 37% say it strongly influences their base salaries. So there is a definite competitiveness for the top talent out there. You've also seen in the last year a shortage of truck drivers here in the States, and you've seen some really creative marketing for folks to get behind the wheel and be able to drive truck.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot. The outside competition makes a lot of sense. So if you're in, I don't know, like Williston, North Dakota, and there's a huge, oil and gas industry there, you're having to compete for some of those same people that may drive the sprayer as would work maybe in the oil and gas sector. So that makes a lot of sense to me why that competition would matter.
Right. I wrote my editorial to kind of complement the hard data of the salary survey. And I just shared that for so many people in ag, we work in this industry because it's one we're passionate about, right? So how, as an employer, how else are you helping fill the cup of your employees beyond just compensation? So even if it's just paint the picture of what your vision is for the future, or share with your employees how you're investing in the business or how you're aligning the business to be solid and successful with the farmer of the future. I think all of those are great ways to get employee buy-in that they're part of the team, and they're part of a bigger picture, and it helps feed their passion.
What's the financial health of the ag retail space like right now? There's highly competitive. Obviously, things like seed. We've seen margins. It's competitive out there. Their seed margins
Right.
aren't like they used to be. Fertilizer a lot more variable in price, so it's not as easy as, hey, buy in July and and hold on and get paid for the carry. What are the margins like?
Reporting from what I hear from ag retailers, margins are continuing to be tight. But I would share that in their work with the farmer, the tone of the conversation has changed dramatically from last year. US farmers have a much greater willingness to try things, whereas in previous, let's say, 3 years, farmers have tried to pinch back that fertility bill, right? Where can they cut back NPK, not sacrifice too much yield? This year, I've heard a lot of conversations of farmers saying, we're going to chase it, right? We're going to go after it. We have the money, the market. We say the market dollar, Chip Flory, our mutual friend, likes to say that market dollars have a greater velocity than government dollars. And, farmers, if they're able to secure some profits via the market, they're going to spend that on chasing even more yield. We sent out, and I'm going to pull up this so I quote the right numbers as well. We sent out a survey in January with the really strong soybean markets, and we asked farmers how that was going to impact their plans for fungicide applications in 21. And 19% of farmers said they'll increase fungicides. 9% said they're going to try fungicides for the first time in soybeans.
Wow.
And so I heard from a farmer in Indiana who said, hey, these soybean prices, we're trying for fungicide on beans for the first time. And this was what I would have characterized a very progressive grower. So for them to say, oh, we're going to try fungicides for the first time, I thought was a kind of a twist. And then I was on the phone with a Missouri farmer yesterday, and they're putting fungicides on everything, all corn, all beans. And it's not just because of the market prices and them chasing yield, but they have the data, the on-farm trials to back up what it can do for them. And I think that kind of goes back maybe to a theme I brought up earlier, is like when we reach these new plateaus and when farmers realize the payback, it's hard to go back from that.
Well, and it's easier now for farmers to do some of those on-farm trials. You don't need the weigh wagon necessarily, because we've got some of these precision ag solutions that make it super easy for you to, or easier to do some of those trials yourself. So you have that data accessible to you.
Yeah, I had a great interview, and I'm going to be posting the story either today or tomorrow with the folks at Syngenta, and they acquired Farm Shots about 3 years ago, and that satellite imagery. They're working with retailers in how they can help provide that satellite imagery to farmers to help make better agronomic decisions, as well as support some product programs. So for example, with fungicide, if they can monitor crop health via these satellite images and then help those growers make a decision around fungicide, it's a win-win. Right? It's providing farmers a new way to view their crop. It's providing that retailer a value add to show the farmer how they can help them. And for Syngenta, it's helping move additional fungicide. So they've had some success with that program, and they're going to be expanding it, or at least piloting herbicide as well as seed care.
Farmer can't spend all their money on land and used equipment. Why not put some of it into fungicide, right?
Well, so I was on the phone with Greg Peterson, Machinery Pete, yesterday, and very quickly, for the end of last year, he was starting to predict that the theme for used machinery and machinery in general was going to become one of limited availability. And we have seen that definitely come true in the 4 months since he started saying that. So yeah, you're right. We can't spend it all on machinery.
Okay. One additional thing I want to talk about. What about environmental regulations and some of those costs that go with that, and the impact that has on ag retails? And I'm thinking specifically about fertilizer.
Oh, I mean, Shaun, when I started reporting on this part of the market 5 years ago, I learned very quickly that if there is an agency that regulates, they've got something to say about what ag retail does, because ag retail manages, stores, transports so many products that regulatory agencies tend to care about. And that was a concern. I hosted a panel as part of the Ag Retailers Association annual meeting. It was virtual, but I hosted a panel. And all three of the government affairs professionals that were on the panel said that they expect some kind of attitude or change with the incoming Biden administration. Some of that we have yet to be seen, just because there's been some priorities around climate, as well as equity and some other issues going on in Washington, D.C., but definitely something that Ag Retailers Association and everyone is keeping their eyes on.
No kidding, because those costs add up and they impact your ability to deliver those services and products to the farmer customer. So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, I just did an interview with a group out of Oklahoma called Heartland Tank Services, and they've developed a new technology that really pinpoints any kind of potential tank leaks and helps folks who have like large liquid storage tanks, specifically with liners in this case, differentiate between condensation and product leaks.
Oh.
And they said, not only is this helping eliminate the labor need for somebody to go manually check tanks every day, like, is there a leak? But it's all, which is a regulatory requirement in some of our states. It's also saving them money from potentially lost product, but it's also helping them steward those products, right? And know pretty instantaneously if they have a product leak.
So if we think back to your survey in terms of fungicide use and more growers thinking about putting fungicides on beans, when we have a market where there is velocity to those dollars, as Chip likes to talk about, does history show that this is when we see new independent retails pop up, where people look at the business opportunity, there's dollars being spent, maybe not as much on what the margins are going to be to those dollars, but there's an opportunity. Has history shown us this is when that happens?
So that's a great question. I would share, I have noticed just in the last couple of months, there's increased chatter, at least on social media, of some up and coming products, some new entrants to the market, some new technologies. I do know a couple of folks who have perhaps moved on from traditional ag retail and started their own consulting businesses. And very commonly, those independent consultants will also sell product. And some of these newer technologies find a great distribution network with those independent consultants. So I think that's a really interesting space to watch. I think that's also a really interesting space to watch as they're able to carve out some geographic niches and how they can specifically serve a certain constituency of farmers based in a smaller, multiple counties, not multiple state area.
A consultant that has access to a warehouse somewhere, somehow, that's able to help move some product as well. And the other trend that I'm wondering about is the virtual salesperson. Have we seen this engaged at all, where a retail would have, because COVID, you think about it, everybody was kind of virtual, and everybody was a virtual salesperson all of a sudden. Are retails hiring people, like someone just to work the phones, maybe working out of their house to try to push out to farmers?
I don't know about that, Shaun. I will share an anecdote from a sales agronomy manager that has 30 years in the business. And I was talking to him in February, and he said, Margy, at the end of the day, the salesperson who is going to make that sale and close the deal is the person who can show up on the farm and shake the farmer's hand. And I think despite some of the COVID regulations, I think everybody's done an amazing job last year at getting the crop in the ground, tending to it and harvesting it. But I think at least the feeling I get, especially with the vaccine rollout increasing, is that farmers are clinging to that normalcy. And so if they can have that personal relationship with their sales team, that's what's going to help close the deal.
Absolutely. Hey, that makes sense. Question here from Shane. How many companies like Meristem Crop Performance, how have they been received by traditional retailers in the U.S.?
So Meristem has a really interesting business model. So they do have their own branded products that are going out via their own distribution channel and setting up that network. A lot of those folks in that network are what I'm referring to earlier as far as those consultants. And then Meristem is also working with, and I think a lot of the examples so far have been cooperatives, but helping them with private label products. Sometimes it's the full Meristem product gamut. Sometimes it's just a segment of that product gamut, but they are helping retailers even build out their own market share with those private label products.
Interesting. And Chris listening, the talk about more use of some of these products because there's more jingle in the pants. Can industry supply, should there be, is there any concerns about supply of some of these products if there's increased demand?
So, and I think that was a great concern when COVID started, just because of the global manufacturing footprint of so many of the AIs, the active ingredients. I think there might still be some issues, kind of on a product by product basis. I have not heard of any widespread concerns. For the most part, I think over the past year, folks have been able to work around some of those constraints.
Yeah, I heard a little bit during the Suez Canal blockage, but that's obviously we're back open for business again, so it's kind of
It's
calmed down.
always something, isn't it? So I mean, I answer all these questions, and I should clarify as of right now, because tomorrow it could change.
Good point. We've been talking to the editor of The Scoop. It is Margy Eckelkamp, based out of Missouri. Margy, thank you so much for joining us here today, talking about the future trends, things you're seeing in ag retail. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Shaun. Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to coming back soon.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, don't forget to tune in to RealAg Radio at 4:30 Eastern, 2:30 Mountain on Rural Radio 147 this afternoon. Cheers, everybody.